Hey, what's going on YouTube? Or Storm here with another deck profile for you guys today. Today I'm going to be profiling Buster Blader. This is a deck that got yet another revamp. Like, we got Blue Eyes on the way and Shining Victories. First, I'm going to talk about some techs I've been seeing, some people testing in the deck, and some things I came up with. The first thing I came up with was I remember seeing, I forget where I saw it, I think it was in an underground video. He was talking about this Sylvan XYZ. It's actually really good in non-Sylvan decks because the main point thing, the second effect is really good for Sylvans, but the first effect is that you can detach and exceed material and excavate the top card of your deck. If it's a spell card, you add it to your hand. If it's not, you can send it to the graveyard. And a lot of the cards in this deck want to be in the graveyard, minus Prisma and I think Kinkabio. So most of the time, if you hit a monster, you're probably going to be happy. If you hit a spell or trap, no big deal, just draw right into it. So outside of 4 cards, you've got a pretty 36 out of 40 is pretty good odds to hitting this card right more often than not, depending on how many cards are left in your deck. I've noticed a lot of players saying that the Magician engine works really good in this deck, and I'm sure it does. But I wanted, when I introduce an archetype, I like to build it more pure and then go crazy later. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's get to the deck profile. So first off, 3 copies of Buster Blader, the Destruction Sword Master. This is the new card. It's counted as Buster Blader while it's on the field of the graveyard. This is unfortunate because you can't search it with Emblem of the Dragon Destroyer, which really upsets me that you can't. But it's kind of like whatever, you got to deal with it. The reason that they do that is because if a card is counted as the same name, you can only run 3 copies of one or the other. You can't run both. It's the same reason why you can't play 3 Fusion Substitute and 3 Polys. If anyone ever does and you go to a regional event, you can call a judge on them. That'd be my guess, because I think. So the main part of this, and the second part of this card, after I'm done with my tangent, is you can target, if you destroy a monster by battle and send a card effect and send it to the graveyard, you can equip it to this card. Then you can send the monster and blow up all monsters with the same type. Works really well with the Synchro monster, so that's pretty cool. 3 copies of the original Buster Blader. You kind of have to play it because it works because you can actually send it with Prisma. You kind of have to play it. 2 copies of Prisma because it helps to make your fusions a little less painful. If it's really good. I feel like 2 copies of Destruction Sword Arm Buster Blades. This card says all these are kind of like the ZW cards, except for this one. They're all like ZW cards. Sort of like if you've played Utopia, you probably know what those do. This one actually prevents face-up spell or traps on the field from activating. So if your opponent's playing a Pendulum deck, they try to put that Luster and Plush Fire in the Pendulum zone. You can be like, nope, with the Synchro out and equip this to a Buster Blader monster, and then they can't play Yugioh because their scales are so wonky. So that's actually really good. I think as long as Pendulums are a thing, they're going to have effects that activate there, and you're going to want to stop those. So that's where this card comes in. 2 copies of Wizard Blade. What this card does is when it's equipped, it allows you to. And the second effect of this card, I forgot about that. You can send it to the graveyard, and the monster is equipped with 2 gains 1,000 attack to the end of this turn. That effect is really relevant because you can use it when your opponent goes to damage steps, which is really nice. 2 copies of Wizard Buster Blade. So you do know what this card does. When it's equipped to a Buster Blader monster, your opponent can act effects in the graveyard. This is really relevant for the Cosmo matchup because their ships can't float, and Mages and Pals do have a couple of effects that activate in the graveyard, although most of the time you want to stop their Pendulum shenanigans. That's where these cards kind of go in tandem, at least to me. And then this is the last Destruction Sword card right here. So this is actually a level 1 tuner, so you can tutor it out with 1-for-1 and Where Art Thou. The effect of this card is that you can target one Buster Blader monster you control, and it's equipped. Your opponent cannot special summon from the extra deck. That's really good. Because that's the reason why the Monarchs are even that good as the field spell, and that's why. And it's also a dark type tuner, which means you can make Void Ogre and Bilza, and that's always nice. 3 copies of Companion of the Destruction Sword Master. So when this card is normal summon, this card is the deck. There's a reason why we're running 1-for-1 and Where Art Thou, all these cards to get it in our hand. So the effect of this card, when it's normal summon, you can add 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, which is pretty good. being able to add your, it's really key, a really key cog of the deck because it searches your fusion spell and your trap card, which is, I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. It's pretty solid. Even if it's one of the reasons why I'm running so much search for it, because you want to see it. 2 copies of Kinkabio. Kinkabio looks solid little play against in Red Eyes decks, and the concept's basically the same. Normal Kinko, special any of these 5 guys back, contact for Beast Eyes Pendulum Dragon. You can also make rank 1s like Dullahan, which is most of the time you're going to be contacting though. 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Foolish is important. We've got so many cards that work in Graveyard. Why not? 1 for 1. Again, we want to see these cards as early as possible. That's why. Also allows us to ditch dead Buster Blader monsters. 2 Emblem of the Dragon Destroyer. Again, 3 targets. 2. Same reason I'm probably going to bump E-Call down later. 1 Regeki. Regeki's pretty key cog of this, pretty good card still. I feel like being able to clear your opponent's field before you push is pretty nice. Now here's my little tech of the deck, which is where Arthas. So you don't know what this card does. It says if you control a level 1 face-up level 1 monster, add a level and any level 1 monster from your deck to your hand, but during the end phase you take 200 damage if you did not normal summon or activate a card with the same effect. The cool thing about this card is that if you activate Companion Sword's effect in the graveyard, you can actually use this card to search out another one. Because you've activated the effect of Companion Swordmaster, so they're 2 cards with the same name. You don't have to normal summon the other target, which is really nice. Being able to search out a follow-up play is really important in a deck like this. And I feel like even though I'm technically breaking my ratio rules because I'm going to be searching this most of the time, it is that important. You have to see it. Then the 2 E-Calls to search our Prismas. Again, we want to see them. That's the main reason why we want to see our Prismas. The only reason I'm only running 2 is I'm running 2 because I kind of want to get to it. I mean, I like consistency. Consistency is nice. Yeah, I forgot that's what it is. Okay. There we go. Probably gonna find it. But anyway, basically the main reason I'm running 2 E-Calls is because I feel like I want to see Prisma. I mean, I might bump it down to 1 in the future. 2 copies of Sacred Swords with the 7 stars. The reason I've noticed a lot of players are trying out 3, and 3 is not optimal because it's much like this card. You can't activate Sacred Swords, multiple Sacred Swords in the same turn. So you don't want to draw more Sacred Swords off your Sacred Sword. And that's why there's 2 and not 3. 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. Again, we still want a space back row. I'm probably going to, in the future, I'm probably going to cut E-Call down to 1 and play 3 MSTs. Maybe play Twin Twister, not sure yet. 2 copies of Destruction Swordmaster Fusion. So you don't know what this card does. It's your fusion spell. It's like a lot like Super Poly, except your opponent cannot respond to it. It can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck that has Buster Blader. But your opponent can actually use, you can usually use cards on your opponent's side of the field. Say they have a, I don't know, Agnister sitting there on the field, you can use it as fusion material. Also works really well with the Synchro, which I'll get to later. 2 copies of Destruction Sword Flash. This card is really good, but here's my problem with it. It requires you to actually have the fusion on the field in order to activate. And most of the time, if you have the fusion out, your opponent can't play. So I feel like that's why this card doesn't see play. Is because most of the time, if you have the fusion out and you have the synchro out, which is what's ideal, your opponent already, you're not really worried about your opponent's monsters. So I feel like this card is probably going to go down, get cut in future variants. And 3 Call the Haunted because it works really well with Prisma. Being able to normal Prisma, send Buster Blader, and then combo off next turn is really nice. So yeah. Now for the extra deck, 2 copies of Beast Eyes Pendulum Dragon. Again, this card's like, having a 3K beater is never a bad thing, so it's pretty good. 2 copies of Buster Blade the Dragon Destroyer. So the main thing with this fusion is it cannot attack directly. That's partially because you can use the fusion spell with opponent's monsters, and that's one of the reasons I think they gave it that clause. They didn't want you clearing your opponent's monsters out and then just killing them with some beefy monster. So it gains 1,000 attack for each dragon-type monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard, which all of them become dragons, and they're in the synchro. Our opponent's monsters they control become dragons. So the main part of this text, this card gains 1,000 attack, and then all dragon-type monsters your opponent controls go to defense position. And Dragon-type monster opponent controls cannot activate their effects. If it attacks a defense position monster, you inflict piercing damage. I feel like this card works really well with something like DNA Surgery. So if you wanted to cut these and maybe play DNA Surgery or something like that instead, works really, really well. It's pretty nice. The fact it can't attack directly, I understand why, but it's kind of like meh. I wanted to mention as well that the fusion spell can actually be recycled. It's one of the cool things is you can ditch a card to actually re-add the fusion and use it again. So it's really nice. The one Void Ogre and Beelza, I feel like these cards are really good because you can make them. Why not? You have a Dark Tuner monster. I will say that Void Ogre, it's not hard in this deck to lower your hand count and empty your hand. So Void Ogre is not a bad card, and Beelza I would say it is good. It's good against Cosmos, but not spectacular because the problem is they can Cosmojo this, and Mojo is a really, really good card. So I feel like, you consider yourself lucky that more Cosmos players aren't running Mojo yet. 3 copies of Buster Dragon. This is the new Synchro month. They're pretty simpler Trampler Dragon. I can't read it. But it doesn't have a lot of attack for a level 8 Synchro, but it has a lot of defense. So when it's on the field, all monsters your opponent controls become Dragon-type monsters. Combos really well with the fusion, and then if you don't control Buster Blader on your turn, you can special summon one from your graveyard, which is really, really nice. Being able to special summon Buster Blader if you don't control one, and you can make another Synchro. And during your opponent's turn, you can target one Buster Blader monster you control, equip it to that monster. It is a quick effect. So what's good about that is, say you're playing against mages and pals and you clear their field, so all the Pendulum monsters are in the extra deck. When your opponent goes to their standby phase, you can equip it with, say, this card, before they put their Pendulum scale up, or you could equip this card so they cannot special summon from their extra deck. One of the most frustrating things to deal with this deck is the fact that you get locked down so easily with the Synchro monster if it goes off, so it's really cool. For the other generics, one Psyframe Lord Omega, the reason I don't normally run Omega in every level 8. It's a really good generic, but the main reason is we can recycle our Sacred Swords targets, which is really nice. Being able to cycle them back and then bring them back with the Synchro is really nice. It does knock a card out of your opponent's hand, but that's kind of a bit of a bonus, in my opinion. One Thought Ruler Archfiend, I feel like this card is a bit better than Crimson Blader because it gains me life points. It allows me to prolong the game, which is really important. Even though, yes, Pepe can put a massive board on the field, so it's kind of like and the card is pretty mediocre against Pendulum decks, so yeah. Enlightenment Paladin is really, on the other hand, is kind of like Thought Ruler's opposite brother in non-magician decks. So when it destroys a monster by battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. It is 2,500, so it's kind of like you may not always get the effect off you might need, but when you do, it's going to really hurt your opponent, and you're going to take a lot of damage. One copy of Stardust Dragon. Stardust is pretty good in this format because Wavering Eyes stops that. It stops Pendulum Sorcerer, as well as stopping cards like Regeki, which isn't seeing as much play, but is still relevant. Also stops Twin Twister, which is a thing, so that's really nice. And it forces your opponent to play around it, and in fact, its recurring negation every turn is really nice. One copy of Red Dragon Archfiend Scarlight, or Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend, whatever. So what Scarlight does is, the main thing is it blows up the board, pushes damage, really good against decks that spam, especially if you get your opponent in a situation where they have 5 monsters on the field, they're going to lose well over half their life points. So this card is actually pretty good. If you resolve it against the right deck, it should win you the game. And then lastly, one copy of Ghost Trick Dullahan. Dullahan's a really decent rank 1. You can make it. So I feel like, we've got the room, might as well play it. So anyway, guys, as always, I thank you guys for watching my video today. I really appreciate when you guys watch my videos. Tune on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays for more Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you like what you saw from this video, please subscribe. Or Storm, signing out.